All right. They're going for it again. That's right. Senator Schumer is going for the UAPDA. So it's going to be interesting to see. There's some other things that are afoot within this whole thing. So we'll see in general how legit this really is, or it's just kind of like a farce. And what I mean by that, check this out from Dean Johnson here. Senator Schumer files the UAP Disclosure Act, UAPDA, as a possible amendment to National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, on July 29, 2025, filed the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act of 2025 as a proposed amendment to the FY 2026 National Defense Authorization Act. The proposed amendment was co-sponsored by Senators Mike Rounds and Kirsten Gillibrand. Like UAPDA versions proposed in 2023, 2024, SA 3111 would create a temporary federal agency headed by a presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed review board tasked with gathering UAP-related information from throughout the government as part of an enforceable, independent, and accountable process for the public disclosure of such record. On initial examination, SA 3111 appears nearly identical to the UAPDA version filed on July 11, 2024, including the much-discussed provision to provide the review board with power of eminent domain in certain circumstances. More on that in a second. No date has been announced for the Senate floor consideration of the NDAA S2296. In most years, relatively few amendments are added to the NDAA after open debate and roll call votes on the Senate floor, but a greater number of amendments are incorporated into the bill through out-of-sight negotiations. The UAPDA is an unlikely candidate for a full floor debate and roll call vote. Most likely, the sponsors hope to get it added to a negotiated list that will be wrapped into the Senate NDAA in block, as occurred in 2023. Even if the Senate includes SA 3111 in the NDAA, that it passes, however, would remain to be negotiated with the House of Representatives. The version of the NDAA approved by the House Armed Services Committee on July 15, 2025, does not contain any such language. All right, let's hop over here and check out the eminent domain, which always seems to hold this thing up. Exercise of eminent domain. The federal government shall exercise eminent domain over any and all recovered technologies of unknown origin and biological evidence of non-human intelligence that may be controlled by private persons or entities in the interest of the public good. Availability to review board. Any and all such material, should it exist, shall be made available to the review board for personal examination and subsequent disclosure determination at a location suitable to the controlling authority of said material, and in a timely manner conducive to the objectives of the review board in accordance with the requirements of this division. So they keep trying to push this particular one. And this is the one where there was the promise to Harry Reid or whatever it might be. They keep pushing this bill. And this bill, whether it was the amendments that were made by Garcia that got shot down, Schumer tried to do this. The eminent domain, every time they put this in there, the first time, remember, they got a version this passed, but it was gutted completely, and they took all this stuff out. If this gets passed, the eminent domain thing, that's game over time, right? Basically means that everybody with the Lockheed Martins, all these different have to surrender this stuff and surrender information and materials and all that, and then that's it. That's the ultimate disclosure ticket. But there's no world where that happens. There's no world where that happens. The president has to pretty much say, approve this, let it go through, that's it, and not listen to the bigwigs in the power seats that are saying, hey, we don't want this out there because we'd have to give up this, we have to give that. People at Skinwalker Ranch don't want to give up this, don't want to give up that. People don't want this thing to pass because they don't want to give up their shit. And then, so our buddy Pavel, who you guys have been watching the channel long enough, great channel now, he's been crushing it. Pavel sent me this and said, look, there's an alternative that's a better version of this, but they keep going for this one. So, well-regulated UAP industry, why the UAP Registration Act is a better path to disclose. In this op-ed, Sean Munger, an attorney and former Marine Corps intelligence analyst, introduces the UAP Registration Act. The forward-thinking legislative proposal addresses two urgent needs. One, it provides a path to responsibly manage breakthrough scientific discoveries, especially those held by commercial entities that may originate from non-human intelligence, and it brings the alleged unregulated UAP industry into a transparent, accountable, and efficient legal structure. As disclosure efforts move from speculation to active efforts involving legislation, the UAP Registration Act proposed herein provides a balanced, proactive approach that respects property rights, promotes public trust, and safeguards national security. It is a necessary step towards building the legal and institutional infrastructure needed for the next chapter of engagement involving unidentified anomalous phenomenon and the potential existence of non-human intelligence. This op-ed aims to re-energize legislative efforts to tackle this subject, promote productive debate, and help to bring about seamless disclosure that uses existing infrastructures and enforcement mechanisms. An initial draft of the proposed UAP Registration Act can be found at the end of this article. The federal government has a long history of providing a regulatory framework for industries handling sensitive and potentially hazardous materials. One notable example is the Atomic Energy Commission, established in 1946 to oversee nuclear energy and weapons. The AEC was created to ensure nuclear materials were used safely and responsibly, balancing national security with public safety and environmental protections. This regulatory approach brought a previously secretive and dangerous industry under strict government oversight, establishing protocols, safety standards, and transparency. Similarly, the other sectors such as pharmaceuticals, aviation, and telecommunications are governed by robust regulatory bodies such as the FDA, FAA, and FCC. These agencies enforce compliance, ensure safety, and maintain public trust through clear regulations and oversight mechanisms. By applying a regulatory framework comparable to that of the UAP industry, we can address the current lack of oversight and ensure that activities related to NHI technology and biological evidence are conducted responsibly and transparently. The UAP Registration Act aims to be a crucial step toward achieving this, aligning the UAP sector with established practices in other regulated industries to protect national interests and public welfare. So they're talking about now what went wrong with the UAPDA, which we just spoke about. And they said, despite receiving bipartisan support, the UAP Disclosure Act, introduced by Rounds and Schumer, has failed twice to become law in its intended form. What began as a promising effort to compel disclosure of UAP-related information has been watered down due to behind-the-scenes political maneuvering, resulting in bureaucratic framework that reinforces the status quo. I argue that the current form of the UAP Disclosure Act risks impeding disclosures by introducing complex oversight mechanisms such as a 9-person review board appointed entirely by the executive branch. This review board would have unprecedented control over the flow of session of UAP disclosure. There are no guarantees that the review board would not become opaque, unaccountable, and susceptible to political influence. Instead of empowering independent inquiry, of inserting real congressional oversight, the UAPDA centralizes control of UAP materials and intelligence within the same institutions that have historically concealed them. The structure doesn't move us closer to transparency and risks locking the door indefinitely. The UAPDA, as drafted, could delay meaningful public engagement and transparency by entrenching the executive branch's grip on UAP-related programs. Therefore, I propose the UAP Registration Act. How it solves the problem here. First, the UAPRA is forward-thinking. As humanity stands on the threshold of transformative advancements in fields like AI, quantum computing, and commercial space exploration, the possibility that private companies could encounter technologies or biological evidence of non-human intelligence is no longer purely speculative. With commercial space firms pushing further into deep space and scientific frontiers rapidly advancing, we must be prepared for the legal and regulatory challenges such as these discoveries could pose. The UAP Registration Act anticipates this scenario by creating a structured process for reporting, registering, and overseeing such materials. This ensures that any future breakthroughs of extraordinary origin are handled with transparency, accountability, and the public interest in mind. The allegations. For decades, it's been alleged that an unregulated UAP industry has been operating under the radar, reportedly sanctioned by the executive order. Government insiders have argued in recent years that private and government entities may possess and back engineer NHI technology and potentially even hold biological evidence. Should these allegations be factual, this clandestine sector lacks oversight and transparency, raising significant national security and public trust concerns. Unlike eminent domain, which involves government seizure of private property, the Registration Act respects property rights. Under this proposed legislation, private and government entities must register and allow inspection of their NHI materials, Eminent domain remains an option if necessary, but it should not be the starting point. This will help foster a cooperative relationship between private organizations and the government, encouraging voluntary compliance and open disclosure. Enhance transparency and accountability. The Registration Act introduces a means of providing a public record, fostering transparency on a subject that has been suppressed for far too long. Public knowledge of holdings will relieve stigma, allowing the science and academic community to study the phenomenon without ridicule. The Act will allow the public and oversight bodies access about NHI materials, ensuring activities related to UAP are conducted responsibly, avoiding the bureaucratic pitfalls. Unlike the UAPDA, a 9-person review board appointed by the executive branch and confirmed by the Senate risks politicization and bureaucratic inefficiency. The Registration Act, by contrast, embeds oversight within existing well-established structures for a streamlined, impartial process. Furthermore, the Registration Act eliminates the risk of obstruction because it requires a statutory public record. Balance of national security and public interest. The Registration Act will balance the need for national security with the public's right to know the truth. Though certain sensitive information may be withheld to prevent harm to national security, the transparency established by the simple disclosure of NHI technology or biological materials in possession of a private or government entity will, in and of itself, bring about the disclosure to the public. Economic benefit through taxation. Regulating the UAP industry provides the government with the ability to tax the sector similar to other regulated industries. The Registration Act will bring UAP under federal oversight, which can be subjected to taxation. This will generate revenue that can be reinvested into the public service and future research. The economic benefit adds another layer of public interest to the regulatory approach outlined with the Registration Act. The time for speculation is over. If there is already an unregulated UAP industry, as whistleblowers and insiders claim, Congress must act. The UAP Registration Act provides the tools to do so responsibly, using the same regulatory logic applied to other sensitive industries. It offers public accountability without sacrificing national security. It respects property rights while encouraging transparency. It also provides a realistic, legally sound alternative to the bureaucratic dead end of the UAPDA. Disclosure should no longer be a question of if, but of how. The UAP Registration Act is the proper foundation for follow-up regulations of this publicly emerging industry. So you can read all the UAP Registration Act language. It can be read here. Sean Munger is an attorney practicing law in Massachusetts, a Suffolk University Law School graduate. I like that one a lot better also. I think it makes a lot more sense because what it does is it gets, as I mentioned before, the Skinwalker ranches and other places that potentially have things and people who have private stuff, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to take your stuff. It's going to know if you want us to take a look at it so we can see what you got, put that into record. And if it's something we find that's dangerous, and if something that we might still be able to do eminent domain, but we want you to be part of it. And we don't want to just tell you we're taking over your stuff. And the other point that he raises that I think is really good, that I didn't really think about too much, and I've never really brought it up when I've talked about the UAPDA thing, is that, yeah, by putting together that committee, I don't trust politicians as far as I can throw them across the street. And, like, you're going to put together this committee? Okay, yeah, those are the 8 people that I'm going to trust. Yeah, okay, they have our best interest. Until they don't. Until there's something else that they're offered. I loved what he said there. It's not a matter anymore of if disclosure is a thing. It's how. How are you going to do it? This is the 3rd time that they're going through with the UAPDA bill as it is. And especially after what I just read there, that was the inclusion if the UAPDA was able to get past the eminent domain. If they're not, it's going to be a watered down bill yet again that means absolutely nothing. So the fight for it, the fact that they want to do it, is encouraging. And it shouldn't be anything less than encouraging that they're still trying to get this passed. But this alternative, to me, seems better. It seems like it makes more sense because of the way that this laid out. Now, I'm also not on the inside, and I'd love to hear the counter to why this doesn't work. As we mentioned many times over when we talked about that Wall Street Journal article, they only went after like one particular side and presented one side. I can't take you serious if you don't have both sides defending themselves. I'd like to hear the same thing. I'd like to hear why, if a Chuck Schumer or a Rounds looked at this, Why is their bill that they put together the better alternative? Is it just because they made it? Or is it one of those things where they actually looked at it and go, you know what, maybe if this is what we're all actually going for, maybe this is the alternative. Maybe this is. This is where it gets to the point of, are you doing this for purely political reasons? Because you can't say, well, you shouldn't be doing it for political reasons at all. It's the whole reason is, I talk about it many times, like Burleson. The light has been shining on. It's the most attention he's gotten in his political career. Of course he's going to be talking about this stuff. Doesn't take away from the fact that he's passionate about it, but this is his thing now, in the way that it was Burchett's and Luna's, and it shines a light on them, so they continue to move forward with it. So the question, again, is if you come up with this bill and someone has an alternative bill that if you're looking through, or legislation, you're going through it, and you're saying, you know what, this might actually have better stuff than what we're trying to do. Should we rethink this, retool this, or is it like, no, get out of our way, man? Because that's usually how it works in politics. No, get out of our way. We have our thing. You're not part of our team. And it doesn't matter what you want to do. We know what we want to do. We came up with the best plan no matter what. Even though you make great points, we don't care about your great points. That's usually what happens in politics. So do me a favor, because like I said, this is the whole reason I do this channel in the first place. I am not someone who has all the answers to this at all. Someone in the comment section could have a much better answer as to why the Schumer and Rounds bill is the better alternative to this. And you can say, well, actually, no. What this person is proposing won't work because of this. Or do you feel like, hey, wait a minute. This guy's on to something. The guy who wrote the op-ed, this guy's on to something. We should be doing this. Or is it all just pointless? Put your thoughts in there. Let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Very close to 50,000 subscribers. Appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye-bye.